Hello my friends, this is Lindy and welcome to my channel, Lindy's Magpie Reads. This is my final Friday reads for 2022. I've read 7 books since my last wrap-up, which was on Boxing Day, and in order not to have too many books to talk about, I've held off from finishing this great book, Thrust, by Lydia Yuknovich. I've got 25 pages left, but I'm going to tell you about that in January. What have I been doing? Before I tell you about books, well, book-related things, I went to West Edmonton Mall with my friend Kathy because we decided to buddy read Valley of the Birdtail. We heard about this, both of us heard about this on Sean the Bookmaniac's channel. Now, I usually shop at one of the independent bookstores, Audrey's or Glass Bookshop, but Indigo had 30% off all their hardcovers, and it was kind of like a cultural experience going to West Edmonton Mall. It's actually the nearest mall for me. Indigo bookstore has got so much homewares, gift items. It was like a cultural experience, seeing things like Prosecco Pong. They had these drink holders that you put in your shower. I didn't know that people brought their drinks into the shower. They had inflatable sleds in various shapes, including looking like snowmobiles. And I wondered if the people who buy those inflatable sleds, if they've ever actually gone sledding, because the first sharp bit of ice, I don't think those inflatable things are going to last long. Oh yeah, there was this heatable, huggable boba. So something that you put in the microwave, a fuzzy thing that's a little bit like a hot water bottle, except it's a microwavable thing. But it's in the shape of bubble tea. Who thinks of these things? Anyway, I've got some more footage taken at West Edmonton Mall, including these big, furry, motorized animals that adults ride on, as well as kids. And there's also footage of the ship. It used to be called the Santa Maria, and they've rebranded it as a pirate ship. So I'm going to save that till the very end for those of you who are interested in what it's like inside this mall that's over 5 million square feet and has more than 800 stores in it. It's just giant. So, Kathy, the same friend who I'm currently buddy reading Valley of the Birdtail with, gifted me a copy of Cora Sandel's Alberta Alone. I'm so glad to get this. Marilyn Maya Mendoza and I are going to be buddy reading this in February. Very much looking forward to that. And she also gave me a copy of this sweet little picture book. It's a single poem by Carol Ann Duffy, a Scottish poet, and it's illustrated by Yelena Bryksenkova. It's about a heartbroken person who lives on Advent Street, and in the days leading up till Christmas is walking outside, looking in at the windows. So not in a pervy way, just more of a feeling of isolation and longing. And it ends on a hopeful note with this person being invited inside into the neighbor's place. Sweet, tiny little gift book treat. I also read Volume 10 of Saga by Vaughan and Fiona Staples. Brian is American and Fiona is Canadian, and they are a phenomenal creative duo. So this series has been going on for a while now, but 2018 was the last volume, and then this one just came out this year. I was so excited that I bought a single issue. Well, actually, 55 is a double issue, and then volume 10 combines issues 55 to 60. If you're not familiar with this, it is a science fiction / fantasy about a family made up of members from opposing sides from a galactic war. And Hazel, a child in the family, is kind of the central character telling it, but there's a whole huge cast of characters, including Hazel now has a stepbrother who's a little boy from the robot kingdom, and he's been traumatized. He's getting therapy for it, but Hazel has not been dealing with the emotional fallout from her father being killed. So that's kind of what's at the core of this story, or this narrative arc. One of the characters that I love in here is Lying Cat, and Lying Cat gets back together with Will. This is a book that, as a whole, I consistently think of as 5 stars, but when it's in pieces, like this, I'd say 4.5. So it's hard to give star ratings to books that are only part of a bigger story. I don't know, how do you rate that sort of thing? The whole Saga series is available through my library digitally through the Hoopla app. And now that I have an iPad, I like reading comics in digital format. And plus, it's very good value, free from your library. Here's another space graphic novel, Space Trash, by the Canadian illustrator cartoonist Jenn Woodall. It's volume 1, so it's just barely setting the scene. We're getting to know the 3 main characters, one black, one Asian, and one white, and they're of high school age. But this is set, I think, in the very late 21st century or early 22nd century, and they go to a school for underprivileged kids on the moon, and everything is just falling apart. But it's kind of like a punk 22nd century Archie comic. Ends on quite a cliffhanger. I love her full color art, and like I said, she really is letting us get to know the characters in this. So it's a bit slow going because there's not a lot of plot action yet. I would say the audience for this is age 13 and up. Saga is definitely for adults. Another graphic novel, Life of Melody by Costa, who is a Brazilian cartoonist. This one started out as a webcomic before being published in print format, and it is a queer rom-com, very cute and charming. The story is this guy who's a fairy godfather, I guess, and a beast man who's a troll variant, both find an abandoned human child at the same time, And at first they fight over who's going to raise this little girl, and then they decide to do it together, and romance ensues. I would say about age 11 and up for this one. Next up, a novella by the Canadian author Sheila Heti. It's inspired by a real friendship between George Ticknor and his childhood friend William Prescott. They were both writers, but Prescott was a lot more successful than Ticknor. And it's written in the form of an internal monologue, kind of stream of consciousness. And Ticknor is full of regret and longing. He admires his friend, but he's also really jealous of him. And there's also this kind of vacillation between hope and despair, like minute by minute in this stream of consciousness. But Ticknor is not a particularly likable fellow, but he's also really human. You know, you can really understand him because he's so awkward and just full of resentments and self-recrimination. I'll give you a taste of the language. The bath water was cold when I pulled myself from the tub, dripping down. I looked about me for a towel, but all of the towels were gone. They were not hanging in the bathroom or lying on the floor. They were in the other room, which was filled up with smoke. I would have to go and dry myself in there, and the bath a waste, the smoke sticking to my skin, stinking me up again. Exhausted and near tears, I went to the mirror. I often go to the mirror when crying to see how I might look. I wonder whether I'd have any sympathy for a man such as myself. Sometimes I feel I would, and it sometimes makes me cry even harder. Other times I do not, and it fills me with despair. Well, then I weep more pitifully than before. In these ways I find I am able to enjoy myself. The pure times I spend alone are rare. He talks in circles so much, and it took me a while to kind of get the rhythm of it, but I find that it did really grow on me over time. And I picked up another book by Sheila Heti this week. This one is a picture book for children, probably ages 4 to 8. A Garden of Creatures by Sheila Heti, illustrated by Esmé Shapiro. This is a philosophical picture book about death, and it treats the subject in a non-traditional way. I find it surreal and reassuring, and it reminded me of the ideas about interconnectedness in Heti's adult novel, Pure Color. In this one, there are 3 friends, but the toast-colored bunny dies. And towards the end, the 2 remaining friends feel that the whole garden was the toast-colored bunny, and perhaps the whole world was, and that they lived inside her in a way they couldn't quite understand. And last up is an audiobook by the Canadian comedy writer Tracy Dawson. It's called Let Me Be Frank, a book about women who dressed like men to do shit they weren't supposed to do. The audio is read by Kendra Hoffman, and it is tart, witty, and there's a lot of righteous indignation, very feminist. As the title suggests, it's short bios showcasing women from across history who have dressed as men. I also looked at the ebook edition because there are illustrations by Tina Burning, and they are delightful. So, in the intro, Tracy Dawson says that back in 2013, she was in Hollywood via Toronto applying for her first American job. So she was with an exec from a major studio who had asked her which shows she wanted to write for, and Tracy told her, and then Tracy was told, oh, those shows don't have any female needs. And she goes into quite a good rant about that. One of the women that she writes about is Helen Craft, who was a light-skinned, enslaved black woman. And she and her husband, William, escaped by having Helen pose as a white man with William as her slave servant. And that was back in 1848 when they escaped from Georgia. Another example is Hannah Snell, who joined the military as James Gray. I'll read you a little bit from that, so to give you the flavor. In 1748, she fought in the siege of Pondicherry, where she reportedly killed several Frenchmen before being wounded. She suffered a musket shot to the groin, but quickly operated on herself, digging the musket balls out of her own crotch, so that the medic would not discover that she was a person with an innie, not an outie. I mean, wow. At a pub one night in 1750, after returning from battle, and perhaps after a bit too much ale, Hannah decided to come clean to her fellow Marines and exclaimed, "Lads, I'm a lady." Shockingly, they were cool about it. They respected and supported Hannah, having fought side by side with her and having witnessed her skill and bravery. With their encouragement, Hannah requested and was granted a military pension and was honorably discharged from the army. That is my favorite part of the story. I love these guys. Hannah's exploits soon became popular gossip, and finding her financial situation to be once again rather precarious, she eventually sold her story to the London bookseller Robert Walker, who published it with the title The Female Soldier, or The Surprising Life and Adventures of Hannah Snell, 1750. As a sensational book publicity tie-in, Hannah began performing a one-woman show around town, most notably at Sadler's Wells Theatre in the Clerkenwell area of London. Hannah sang ballads and told of her adventures, but perhaps most thrilling to the audience was when she appeared in military male garb and performed traditional musket drills. Hannah retired to Wapping, where she opened a pub called the Female Warrior. The sign hanging out front displayed a portrait of her in female dress on one side and in Marine uniform on the other, with the inscription, "The Widow in Masquerade." We always knew this broad was enterprising, am I right? And so, those are the books that I have read in the past few days. In my next video, I am going to be looking back on my first year in BookTube and also on my reading in 2022. I always do book stats at the end of the year, so I will include those. And very soon I will also be doing videos of, at least one video, of my faves of 2022. Thank you as always for watching. I appreciate your attention. I appreciate all the comments that you give, and very grateful to be a part of the BookTube world here. I will see you soon.